This is Damon Fordham, adjunct professor of history at the Citadel and Charleston Southern University, and I'm here to tell you a little known fact. You were looking at scenes of the Mount Zion AME Church in downtown Charleston, which was built in the 1800s and where my mother worshipped, in fact, during the 1950s, among other things. The church was an outgrowth of Mother Emanuel AME Church, the more famous church elsewhere in Charleston. And most people do not know, it's been a buried fact for many years, that on March the 5th, 1888, that church was graced by the presence of the legendary Mr. Frederick Augustus Bailey Douglass. For those of you who don't know, Douglass was born in slavery in Maryland. He believed for many years, since of course they didn't keep birth dates of enslaved people at that time, that he was born in February of 1817, but after his death, it was revealed by a scholar that he actually was born in February of 1818. He had an amazing life. He learned to read from his slave mistress, a lady by the name of Sophia Auld in Baltimore at around the age of 9. And her husband stopped her from doing that, saying that it was dangerous to teach a black person how to read. So he purchased a book called The Columbian Orator with some spare change, and he read a play called The Dialogue Between the Master and the Slave, in which the slave used his own wit and articulation and skill to debate his master into freeing him. And that planted the seed that he could use his mind to free himself. Well, over the years, he tried to lead a slave rebellion. He got into a fight with a Mr. Covey who tried to beat him while enslaved and so forth. And finally, in 1838, his soon-to-be wife wrote him a pass to go to New York on a train where he donned a sailor suit and pretended to be a sailor, and he became free. After that, he became a popular lecturer, went to England and many other places to speak against slavery, and soon became a confidant of people such as William Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist, John Brown, the great freedom fighter, and eventually even Abraham Lincoln, with very positive results. So anyway, in the midst of all of this, he was the major spokesman for African American rights in those days, best known at the time at least. And he came to Charleston on the night of March the 5th, 1888. And he enthralled his audience with some really interesting bits of wisdom. He gave a speech that he often gave called the SelfMade Man, with a few little improvisations here and there, and was very well received. He said, "The only secret to success is honest, persistent effort. I scorn the good luck theory by which some men are supposed to have achieved success. Knowledge comes by study, battles won by fighting. The man of good luck is the man of hard work. I remember the little chimney corner where for 3 years I knelt and prayed for freedom, but I failed to see the slightest scintillation of an answer until I prayed with my legs." One lady actually got hysterics at this and applause, and the audience really well received all this. He went on to say that there is no royal road to learning, or wealth or distinction, no growth without exertion, no polish without friction, no progress without motion, no victory without a conflict, no crown without a cross. All I ask is for the colored man is to let him alone and give him fair play, particularly to give him fair play. The American people owed the Negro race a vast debt for the 250 years of slavery they had entailed upon them, and the surplus in the treasury of the country could not be better disposed of than by paying at least a portion of it to those people so long deprived of honest wages for harder work. A lot of people nowadays would really like that portion of it. He went on to conclude that it is only a question of a short time where throughout the broad confines of this reunited country, equal and exact justice to all. The audience greatly applauded, and even the News and Courier, which was no real friend of African Americans in those days, the Charleston News and Courier newspaper, they enjoyed that speech, and they showed Frederick Douglass quite a bit of respect too. Now, unfortunately, in the next few years, you would have an upgrade of lynchings as well as segregation laws and the denial of African American rights to vote. But he came back strong with a speech called The Shock of the Hour, or Why is the Negro Lynched, that he gave in Washington, D.C. in 1894, 1 year before his death in 1895. And you can find that speech online. And you would really find it quite interesting and inspiring. And this is important for several reasons. Number one, people go by Mount Zion AME Church constantly and would never know that Frederick Douglass once spoke there and spoke those wise words. You see, not all of our history can be found on the internet, which I always say that the internet along with Hollywood are the worst places to find your history anyway. But sometimes you have to dig through the old newspapers, go into archives, do the dirty work, and listen to the elderly to really learn some fascinating things that may inspire you. And while I'm on that note, another reason this is important is because, ladies and gentlemen, let's be real. We are not living in intelligent times. And often we have to search hard to find the voices of wisdom that have graced us in our past, and dig up the gems that they have left behind and adapt them and use them for modern purposes so that people today could go forward instead of backward. This is Damon Fordham talking about the time that Frederick Douglass spoke at the Mount Zion AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina on March the 5th, 1888.